Hello everyone and welcome back to Chess Game Design with me. I don't know how to make a better intro, but okay. So in the last lesson what we did was, well, get this set up. So now once we select a piece, and once the game actually loads, there we go, we are told graphically where we can move. So I can't move onto my own pieces, but I can move onto other pieces, and because this is just the default piece, I can move it anywhere I want to. We also made sure that the user knows whose turn it is, so that it makes it easier for them. So what I said we were going to do today, and we are actually going to do it, is look at the different pieces. So before we do this, just make sure that, I did mention this in the last lesson, you've put in the rook scripts and so on. So as you can see, I've got the knight script on the knight, the bishop script on the bishop, and so on. They are still going to work all the same. So even and that's because we're inheriting from piece, so you don't actually need to have anything inside of here. Again, make sure to delete everything that is inside of here, and what will be inside of there is the start and the update methods, which we don't need because we want them to be inherited from piece once again. Also, do make sure to tick the is white on the white pieces. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go on to the knight. What I am going to do is, well, just copy and paste everything and then explain it. I think that this is the easiest way to do it, and for some reason, oh yeah, so we need to make that public, although that's quite odd. I thought that we had already made it public. So that's in piece and game manager, so we need to make game manager in piece public. I thought I did give that last time, but I guess I didn't. There we go, so now it's fine. Because we're inheriting from it, if we want it to be explicitly inherited, we have to make it public. Otherwise it is still inherited, but I don't exactly know how to explain it. It's still there, but we can't exactly access it. So I've got a comment here. I'm going to explain that first. So for the knight, as we know how the knight moves, the knight can move only to certain pieces, and this should all, yep, there we go, it is actually working. I am going to explain how and why it works the way it does. So as you can see, the knight can move there, 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 and there. Good. So I can move it. I can't move it to any of the other pieces. When I click on any of the other pieces, it deselects, and we did that 2 lessons ago. So that it deselects if it's an invalid move, because, well, maybe the user didn't mean to select this piece. That's my assumption, and I think that that's the best assumption I can make. So those are the places where the knight can move to. Let's actually put this to one side and this to the other side, and so that I can explain it. I want to make this slightly smaller, but okay. I guess I'm gonna have to maximize it here. I know it's kinda long here. Anyway, so what I have in here, I have, again, I'm overriding the function check valid moves, which we created in piece, in select piece. And the first thing I do is valid moves clear, because check valid moves is called every time we select the piece, and we want to clear it so that in case the piece has been moved, it doesn't remember its old moves, but it gets new moves. Also, please do excuse the noise that you might hear from the background. There are repairs going on outside, but yeah. So we clear the valid moves list or array. I'm not too sure what it actually is. It's a list, okay? So we clear that, then we go through all of the pieces, or all of the squares that exist on the board, i.e. the squares which we have created here. So that's a square, and I did not mean to minimize that. Here we go. So I go through all of those which are in the game manager, which is why I access it through the canvas, which we have already inherited from our piece. And what I do is I individually compare the position of my current piece to the position of where I should be allowed to move it. Now, in our pseudocode, what we said was we might need to deal with out of bounds. Well, because we're dealing with a graphical user interface, they can only make so many moves, so they can't really move out of bounds, so we don't have to worry about that. And so what happens is J, I call the square that I'm looking at J, and this just refers to the current pieces int row or int column. So j.int row, so that's actually, seeing as I want to explain this first. So because I want to explain this first, I want to uncomment it and comment something else, because I think that the way I've done it in the new way is slightly more efficient, but it really depends on the situation. I do want to keep valid moves.add. So every time this condition is met, to valid moves we add the current square, and so that we can move to that square. The condition which needs to be met is, well, let's give you an example. They're all pretty similar. So j.intRow equals this.intRow plus 1. So if the square which I'm looking at is on a row that's to the one to the right of mine, and a column that is 2 to the left of mine, so one row plus, so that goes up 1, and 2 columns to the left, so 1, 2. So this, if this square, well, I'm looking for this square. If I'm currently on this square, so if j is this square, then this is going to be invalid, although this is going to be valid. But because we have an and here, it's not going to match. Let's give you another example. So I have this, or this, and this one is going to be, if I can actually go to it, there we go. This condition over here, which I have selected right now, checks for int row plus 2, so let's count up, 1, 2, and int column minus 1, so this one is going to match. The others aren't going to match. So this, or this, or this, or this, or this, and so on. So those are my conditions. If one of those, if the current square that I'm looking at matches these conditions, I am just going to go through all of them really slowly so you can pause and copy them. I'm going to explain the ending bit in just a second. Then I want to add it to valid moves. I do have an extra condition here. So if I am doing it this way with these commented out and this not commented out, then I would need to keep, this is quite annoying, it's so long. Then I would need to keep this in as well. And this checks that there are no children inside of the square. So if the square has no pieces on it, then add it. Otherwise, if these conditions are true, but there are children, again, add it, but I want to treat it in a different way. Otherwise, just make them, shade them out so that the user knows they can't access it. So the new way I did it in, which I think is more efficient, is just commenting the I don't have to check it twice, because if I would have to check this and this. But now I'm just doing all of this major checking once. And then what I do is, if there is a piece on the square, I do this. And if there isn't, then I, well, what do I do if there isn't? I think I just add it anyway, even if there isn't a child in the square, because I'm not checking for this. And if it's not white, so this is the main reason why I'm checking if there is a piece, because I don't want to be able to take my own pieces. So if there is a piece in this on the square, then I don't want to directly add it, but I want to make sure that it's the opponent's piece, and then add it. if I didn't have this extra step here, then once I enter into this, and if a square doesn't have a child element, then I would just get an error. Which is why I have to make sure that I do this check. And then add it. And do this a separate else if statement. And I put an else, shade it out. And again I put an else here as well, because, well, that's how you have to do it. I was thinking about it, and if you ignore this else, then what happens is not everything gets shaded. Let me just show you really quickly. So once the game loads, there were certain situations when I didn't get everything to shade, if I remember correctly. Or maybe I did. That's kind of weird. I guess I can keep that commented out as well then. That's kind of helpful. It saves on more efficiency. Because, well, I don't need to include that extra line of code. So, I hope that that's the night explained. I know that this is quite a long line of code, but hopefully you can see it. So I'm just checking for each of the columns and rows. So if I select this night, then this would be row plus 1, column minus 2. This would be row plus 1, column plus 2. This would be row minus... Wait, which one? Oh yeah, row minus 2, column plus 1, and so on. And that's what I do the checks. So that's how I treat the night. Also notice that I have extra libraries or namespaces, whatever you want to call them, included in here, just like I have in the piece. They don't get inherited because, well, this is the piece, not this. This isn't included in the piece. So you have to reinsert them, I guess. And then now we can move on to the pawns. I think that the knights and the pawns are the easiest place to start off with right now. Because for the rook and the queen and the bishops, we're going to have to do some collision detection. It's not exactly collision, you will see what I mean. Because if there's a piece in the way, we don't want to be able to go through the piece. So, where's my white pawn? Ah, there we go. So, black pawn and white pawn are pretty similar to each other. I mean, not to knight. Let's talk about the black pawn first. And as we saw, we probably can just comment this out. I just haven't noticed that, I guess. And what I do is, well, let's explain again. I'm going through all of the pieces on the board. First of all, I clear that because I want to change it on each selection. Then the checks I do is... What is up with this indenting? Oh, okay, that's different. So if this piece hasn't made any moves, I am not actually sure if we included that last time. Oh, we did, good. We are counting up the moves. So if this piece hasn't made any moves, and so let's see here. So if the squares, and then what we're looking at is, oops, what happened there? I have no idea. Okay, it doesn't matter. I'm going to fix that. It looked like a bug to me. And I need to be looking at the black pawns. There we go. So if the pawn hasn't made any moves, and I am looking at the square which has this, where this is true, i.e. this square here, for example, or the square that's has a row of 2 minus my pawn and is on the same column, then add it to valid moves. We only want this to be added to valid moves if this is the pawn's first move, because the pawn can only move 2 squares at once on its first turn. And I also checked that there are no children there because, well, that complicates things if there are children there, because they might be my own and I don't want to be able to take anything. A pawn cannot take going forward anyway, so even if there is the opponent's piece there, you can't just stomp over it. So that's the first check I make, and then I add it. Else if, and this is the next thing I do, which is kind of the longest thing. So similarly to the knight, I just look at all of the places where I can move. So let's just look at the ore. The ore separates everything. So this is my condition that I'm checking. If the square which I'm looking at has a row of the pieces row -1, so it's if the square is 1 below the pawn and is in the same column as the pawn, and it also doesn't have any children, because I don't want to be able to take a piece if it's right in front of my pawn, because again the pawn cannot take walking straight forward, it can only take sideways. So if that's a condition, then add it to, then check the rest, which I'm going to get into later. Well, I mean after I cover this. Or this is the other condition. I think to the or. Here we go. Selecting is kind of weird. So or the square's row again is 1 below the pawn, but this time I'm checking that the column is +1. And that there is a child, so that there is a piece. So, for example, I'm looking at this square here. I'm saying, is this square with a column of +1 and a row of -1? For example, yes it is. Does it have a piece on it? Well, in my case it doesn't, but if it did, then it would become a valid move. The same thing happens for this square, but instead of having column +1, I just do column -1, as you can see over here. And similarly to the knight, I had 2 variations, which is why I have this comment right here, as well as this comment right here. So currently we don't actually need those. So if those check out, then what I do is I check that if it has no children, then I just make it a valid move straight away. And if it's the opponent's, I also make it a valid move. If it's mine, then I don't make it a valid move, because I don't want to be able to take my own pieces once again. The only difference between the black pawn and the white pawn is that instead of checking that row is -1, I just check that row is +1. So I can literally just copy this and paste it over here and change it right now, even though I do have the code on the side. So in row +1, in row +1, and I think I have one more location, +2 again over here as well. And I believe that that's also going to work now. So let's just make sure. Oop, okay, we have some errors. That's an error. In square. Okay, let's see. So basically I was just missing, or I just forgot to change one of the int rows to from a minus to a plus. And also, if you wanted to do it the other way, which is the commented out way, then you have to change those as well. I'm not going to do that right now. Also, don't forget to change the name here to white pawn instead of black pawn, if you are just copying and pasting it over. And now if we start the game, once it loads, as you can see, we get proper pawn behavior. And I can show you that it is actually correct by just showing you this. So you can, oops, let's slightly zoom out there. You can see that I can't go onto that pawn. This pawn can only go to that pawn, it can't go to either of those two. This one the same. Let's add another one, another one. This pawn, oh, it can't take that. It shows that it can take it. Ah, yes, that's where the error comes in. So that's where you need this to be in action. And if you, now I remembered. So it shows it as a valid move, even though it doesn't count it as a valid move, because I can't actually click on it, as you can see there. I can't actually go onto the square. And now, because I have fixed it, let's just make sure that it doesn't actually do that again. And yes, as you can see now, that doesn't show up as a valid move. But everything else still works the same. And I can move the knights the way I want to move them. I actually wanted to show you the black's movement, because there we go. This pawn can move forward only one. This pawn can only move forward one. Well, I can't exactly demonstrate that here, but yes, it can only move one, whereas the starting pawns can move two. And I think that that's that behavior done. So in the next lesson we are going to be working on the king, I think, because that's the next easiest thing to work on. Then we are going to be working on the other three pieces. So thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please give me a like, share and subscribe. It encourages me to make more videos such as this one. If you have any questions, once again, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. I will answer them as soon as I can. Other than that, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.